The clock is ticking for India and the United States, as both nations stand at a pivotal crossroads in their economic relationship. Negotiators are racing against time to finalize a crucial trade deal by July 9, 2025, a deadline that could define the future of bilateral commerce for years to come. The atmosphere is tense, with every meeting and document review carrying the weight of national interests and global expectations. If talks collapse, the US could reimpose tariffs, threatening the seamless flow of goods and services between the two countries. Such a move would not only disrupt established supply chains, but also impact businesses, workers, and consumers on both sides of the globe. For India, the stakes are incredibly high. A favorable agreement could open up new export opportunities, boost manufacturing, and create jobs. However, these gains may come at the cost of making tough concessions in sensitive sectors. Agriculture remains the flashpoint of these negotiations. India's protective tariffs and subsidies have long shielded its vast farming community, ensuring food security and rural stability. Meanwhile, the US is pushing hard for greater access to India's massive consumer market, especially for its agricultural products. The outcome of these talks could fundamentally reshape India's agricultural landscape, particularly for key sectors like dairy, sugar, and oilseeds. Changes in policy could affect millions of small farmers, altering the way food is produced and traded across the country. Every clause, every word in the agreement is under intense scrutiny. Indian officials are tasked with the delicate job of balancing the promise of economic growth with the urgent need to protect the livelihoods of millions in rural communities. On the other side, the US is eager to find new markets for its agricultural surplus, hoping to boost its own rural economy and strengthen trade ties with one of the world's fastest-growing markets. India, however, remains determined to safeguard its farmers, who form the backbone of its economy and society. The government faces mounting pressure from rural communities to ensure their interests are not sacrificed at the negotiating table. As the deadline looms ever closer, the pressure mounts on both sides to strike a deal that supports economic growth without undermining the foundation of India's agricultural sector. The stakes are not just economic, but deeply social and political as well. Across India, families and farmers watch anxiously, hoping for a breakthrough that will secure both prosperity and protection for their way of life. The outcome of these talks will echo far beyond boardrooms, shaping the future of millions for generations to come. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia. India's ethanol blending program has been a game-changer, transforming not just the country's fuel landscape but also its agricultural and economic future. What started as a modest initiative has now become a symbol of innovation and progress, putting India on the global map for clean energy solutions. Back in 2013 to 14, ethanol made up just 1.5% of petrol sold at Indian pumps, a figure so small it barely registered for most consumers or producers. Fast forward to 2023 to 24, and that figure soared to 14.6%. The latest data shows it's already at 18.8%, a remarkable leap in just a decade. This rapid growth is a testament to coordinated efforts by policymakers, industry leaders, and farmers alike. The country is now on track to hit its ambitious 20% blending target well ahead of schedule, a milestone that once seemed out of reach. But this isn't just about cleaner fuel. It's about saving billions in foreign exchange, reducing dependence on imported oil, and creating new revenue streams for Indian farmers, who are now vital players in the nation's energy story. Ethanol is no longer just a byproduct of sugarcane. India's biofuel revolution is now powered by a diverse range of crops. Since 2018 to 19, India has pivoted to using grains, especially maize, as a major feedstock for ethanol production. This move has opened up new opportunities for grain farmers across the country. For 2024 to 25, projections show that 68% of ethanol will come from grains, with maize leading the charge and reshaping the supply chain. Maize alone is expected to contribute nearly 484 crore liters, surpassing all sugarcane-based sources combined, a dramatic shift in the industry's foundation. This marks a fundamental change in India's biofuel industry, opening new doors for innovation and investment, but also bringing new anxieties for those who relied on the old system. The rapid transformation has created winners and losers, setting the stage for the next big debate: how to balance growth, sustainability, and the interests of all stakeholders. As India celebrates its sweet success, the sugar industry braces for what comes next, knowing that change, while necessary, always comes with its own set of challenges and opportunities. India's sugar industry, once the backbone of ethanol production, now faces a new threat: U.S. ethanol imports. With domestic sugar demand flat, ethanol sales have kept mills afloat and farmers paid. Ongoing trade talks could open the door to cheap American ethanol, undercutting local producers. In 2024, India was already the third largest buyer of U.S. ethanol, though imports are currently restricted to non-fuel uses. The industry fears a trade deal could dismantle these protections, allowing U.S. ethanol into the fuel market and squeezing out domestic sugarcane-based ethanol. Grain-based ethanol is already favored by policy, putting sugar mills on the defensive. Competing with subsidized U.S. ethanol could devastate an industry supporting over 50 million farmers. The fear: India's energy security and rural livelihoods could be sacrificed for a trade agreement. The sugar sector's future hangs in the balance. The threat isn't just ethanol imports. Cheap genetically modified U.S. maize could soon flood the market for ethanol production. NITI Aayog has floated the idea of importing GM maize to accelerate blending targets, bypassing domestic food supplies. For sugar millers, this is a direct blow. Grain-based ethanol is already taking market share. Imported maize could finish the job. The economic logic is simple. Imported maize is cheaper, but the cost is borne by millions of sugarcane farmers and mills. Investments made in distilleries could become stranded assets. The sugar industry fears being pushed out of a market it helped create as policy shifts favor foreign imports over domestic stability. The rush to meet biofuel targets could leave India's oldest agro-industry in crisis. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia. The recent shift towards using maize for ethanol production has reignited the long-standing food versus fuel debate in India. As the government pushes for cleaner energy and reduced oil imports, the demand for maize as a biofuel feedstock is rapidly increasing. This transition, while promising for energy security, brings with it a host of new challenges for the agricultural sector. Traditionally, sugarcane has been the main crop for ethanol, and its use doesn't threaten food security. But maize is different. It's not just a cash crop, but a staple ingredient in livestock and poultry feed, forming the backbone of India's animal protein supply. When maize is diverted to fuel production, the supply for animal feed tightens. This leads to higher costs for poultry and dairy farmers who rely on affordable feed to keep their operations running. As a result, prices for everyday foods like eggs, milk, and chicken can rise, directly impacting consumers across the country. The poultry and dairy sectors are not only crucial for nutrition, but also provide millions of rural jobs and livelihoods. Any disruption in feed supply could ripple through the economy, affecting both rural families and urban consumers. To meet the growing demand for ethanol, NITI Aayog has proposed importing genetically modified maize. But this move faces strong public resistance, with concerns about food safety and the risk of contaminating India's non-GM maize supply chains. This dilemma raises a fundamental question. Should India's maize be used to feed its animals and people, or to fuel its cars? The answer isn't simple, and the consequences are far-reaching. While energy independence is a worthy goal, it cannot come at the expense of food affordability or the livelihoods of millions of farmers. Balancing these competing needs is a delicate task for policymakers. Without a comprehensive plan to protect the feed supply, India risks solving one problem, energy security, while creating another, a crisis in food production and rural employment. The stakes are high for millions of small farmers, rural workers, and consumers alike. The choices made today will shape the future of India's food system and its rural economy for years to come. The US, a global agricultural powerhouse, is eyeing India's booming ethanol market. With surplus maize and ethanol and trade tensions elsewhere, the US sees India's E20 target as a golden opportunity. American agribusiness lobbies are pushing hard to remove import barriers and certify US ethanol for fuel blending in India. Their pitch: cheaper US ethanol will help India meet its blending goals faster and more economically. But Indian producers see this as a takeover, not a partnership. The fear, once the market opens, US imports could overwhelm local supply chains, making India dependent on foreign fuel. Control could shift from Indian farmers to global suppliers, threatening both energy and food security. The trade deal could redefine who benefits from India's green energy transition. The soybean sector is sounding the alarm over possible GM soybean imports from the US. SOPA, representing 7 million soybean farmers, warns that cheap imports would crash domestic prices and devastate rural incomes. Farmers are already struggling, with prices below the government's minimum support price. Recent cuts in import duties on edible oils have made things worse, forcing local processors to cut capacity or shut down. Allowing GM soybean imports could be the final blow, crippling the domestic industry and triggering job losses. SOPA argues that the combination of low duties and cheap imports is unsustainable for Indian players. The fight is to protect the entire value chain, from farmer to processor to worker. The trade deal is seen as an existential threat to India's soybean sector. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia. A NITI Aayog-backed proposal to import whole GM soybeans for oil extraction and re-export the meal has alarmed the industry. Most Indian processing plants are inland, far from ports, making the logistics of import-process-export unviable for domestic players. This opens the door for global agribusiness giants, ADM, Bunge, Cargill, Louis Dreyfus, to dominate the sector with their port-based infrastructure. These multinationals could bypass local processors, control prices, and squeeze out Indian farmers and workers. The fear isn't just competition, it's a complete takeover of the sector by foreign corporations. Decades of domestic industry could be dismantled, leaving farmers at the mercy of a few global players. The risk, losing control over a strategic sector to foreign interests. As India nears a trade deal with the US, the fate of its sugar and soybean sectors hangs in the balance. These aren't just business disputes. They're about rural livelihoods, food security, and national sovereignty. Cheaper imports could unravel decades of progress, leaving farmers and industries vulnerable. The food versus fuel debate and the threat of foreign domination raise tough questions for policymakers. The government must balance global partnerships with the need to protect its agricultural backbone. The challenge: secure growth without sacrificing the interests of millions of farmers and workers. The outcome will shape India's agricultural future for generations. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia.